Well, we're a little over a week away before putting 2025 in our rearview mirror. I love this time of year because it often brings about a sense of introspection and an opportunity to take stock of the challenges we faced and the goals that we've achieved. Now, as photographers, that may involve reviewing the photos we've taken and how we've grown in our skills behind the camera and in front of the computer. And that's what I want to share with you here in this 41st and final video of 2025. I'm going to show you my 20 favorite photos of the year, and then we'll walk through an edit of one of them. But before we begin, I want to take a minute to sincerely thank all of you for being here with me. This opportunity to help you find greater enjoyment with your own photography pursuits is one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things that I've ever had the privilege to do. And I'm beyond excited to continue this journey with you into 2026. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so these are my 20 favorite photos from 2025. I guess I could have done my 25 favorite photos of 2025, but literally that just popped in my head just now. So we'll stick with 20, but I want to show you a little goal that I had for myself that I started at the beginning of this year. It's pretty straightforward, but what I told myself I wanted to do was I wanted to go out and get some new photos at least once a month this year. Because if you look, if I go to 2024, for example, I missed March. I didn't do any shooting in March of last year. In 2023, only these months had photography. In 2022, only 1 month. And so for 2025, I was like, you know what? I really want to get out there. And even if it's just going to the same places, which it really was, it was going to the same preserves or photographing in my backyard with some trips throughout the United States mixed in. But I did manage to get new photos made every single month this year. And you know what? It's one of those goals where I remember making it around this time last year, funny enough. It's not that difficult, right? But as you can see in previous years for me, it actually was, especially in like 2021. That was like a rough year. And so I only got 1 month of photography. And so looking back now, I remember when I created the December folder here and I put my first shoot a week into the month. It just made me really happy. I felt just a sense of accomplishment that I don't know. It makes me want to carry that into the next year. And so you can be sure that in 2026, I'm going to try to do the same thing. So let's go ahead and start walking through these. Now, for the most part, these are all in HDR. So if they look a bit bright, I apologize. Again, my screen recording software does not handle recording HDR. I hope one day, maybe in 2026, that functionality will come in because I would love to create editing videos using HDR for you. It just, to me, that was probably one of the biggest things that changed in my editing workflow in 2025 was I started moving everything to 32-bit HDR. So let's just walk through. I mentioned how, again, I wanted to get more action shots of birds. It's not hard to find them perched in trees where I am. So like watching herons in flight, first of all, watching a heron in flight, they're just something else with their aerodynamics. Osprey flying at me, that's to me one of the hardest things for me to capture are birds flying at me, especially kind of these birds that are just, for me, hard to find. I don't see the ospreys too often. But yeah, again, this reddish egret. And again, probably my favorite shoot of the year was this one here in February, if I remember correctly. I'd just gotten my new Sony 400 to 800 millimeter lens back there. And so we went out to Fort DeSoto State Park, me and my buddy Matt Klaskowski, and we just had a blast. And so again, just, looking for these decisive moments, like I love this. This is a huge challenge, and it's also a very rewarding one. Now, I also had some opportunities for some fun coastal landscape photography. We went to California a few times. This is in Carlsbad, and I just loved watching this guy fishing in the ocean. I don't think I've ever seen that quite like this before, so it was fun to kind of use that negative space. Here, just like this wall art and having some fun with street photography, but a little bit more creative. And then, yeah, some landscape photos here that I find very, very rewarding. It's nice to be able to go back to landscape, which is what I love. That's my first passion. Even though I love photographing birds, this will always be my passion. And so, yeah, I mean, California is one of the most beautiful places in the country in terms of coastal, rugged landscape photography. Now, this is taken at one of the preserves where I go to almost every single weekend. Most of the time, I've got my super long lens, but every now and then I'll use my iPhone, or I'll just bring my 16-35 just to capture the actual scenery. So that's where I am. Like, I'm walking on these boardwalks, usually like, leaning off one of these wooden rails here and trying to nab a bird doing its thing. And then this is taken in Utah. This is Cottonwood Canyon, I think, outside of Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, probably this sky is going to be totally blown out in the recording. But again, being able to get some solid landscape photography, and this is Kolob Canyons in Utah. Again, another osprey. I've actually found that this osprey loves to hang out on this pylon in the wetland. And actually, just yesterday, I got some new photos of the osprey with some prey. Like it actually was eating food that it killed. And so that was really interesting to see here. And again, yeah, like I said, challenge myself to get birds in flight was really, really important for me. Now, this holds special significance. Again, unfortunately, I would assume that the photo is super blown out, but if not, great. So I actually had the opportunity to spend a good chunk of time with Thomas Knoll, who is the co-creator of Adobe Photoshop, which is just mind-boggling to me. And so we had the opportunity here. We were driving and we were leaving Fresno, California on our way to Sequoia National Park. And we saw the sun start to set and we knew this was going to be something special. And so we pulled over off the side of the road and we started just taking a bunch of photos. And like, to me, this will be one of the fondest memories ever, just because obviously the scenery is gorgeous, but also the person I had the opportunity to photograph alongside, absolute legend. So yeah, I this will go down. This is a special photo. This was also taken from the same shoot with the Adobe Camera Raw team in Sequoia National Park, taken from Mora Rock, or actually I think we were hiking to the top of Mora Rock when I got this. And then again, decisive moments and action shots. I've been spending a lot of time looking at herons and like how they go about like stabbing their faces into the water to get fish. And then this was just taken just the other day. The great blue herons here are starting to build their nests. And so you can see this is actually the last photo in the collection. This was taken yesterday from the date of recording, where they, this heron would fly out and get a branch or a twig and then bring it over here. And the two of them would start building their nest together. So I suspect we'll start to see eggs and little babies probably in the next month and a half. So it's going to be great. All right. So those are my top 20 favorite photos from 2025. Again, a lot of them had to do with challenges that I set for myself. Some of them obviously had more kind of sentimental stories behind them, like the one taken with Thomas Knoll. But I want to kind of switch gears now. No video is complete without some sort of editing tutorial, right? And so I'll walk you through a quick series of photos I took, and then we'll work on the one that I think is the strongest of the series, and we'll just have some fun to round out 2025. All right, so you could see this sequence of photos here, and I'm going to walk you through them really quickly. So let's look at the metadata. Again, Sony A1 Mark II, my 400 to 800 millimeter lens, pretty much zoomed in all the way. This is 795 millimeters. I usually jack up the ISO so that I can get a faster shutter speed, and my aperture is at the minimum f8 for this lens here. Now, oftentimes what I see with these herons is they will just kind of stand there and they will be laser focused on a spot in the water, and they're waiting for a fish to come through, and then they will stab their beaks into the water. And so you can see if we kind of walk through the sequence here, the heron's there, and then boom, it puts its beak in. And in this case here, I don't remember if he got a fish. But what I do want to show you is choosing which photo I think is the best one to edit. And so if I go back here, there's one in particular, not this one, but this one right here. I think this is the strongest one. The reason for that is you can see just one, obviously this beautiful symmetry in the reflection, but I love the way the tip of the beak just breaks the water and you get a ripple right there. I think this is absolutely magical. Like to me, if we kind of go over, you can see this is right before, and then this is right after. So the bird has plunged its head into the water. So yeah, I think this is the photo we're going to work with. So let's start with cropping. Like let's get the composition dialed in. So I'm going to go ahead and go to crop. Let's press and hold on the Option key or Alt. If you press and hold on Option or Alt while dragging on one of these bumpers, it will drag in evenly from all four sides. So I'm going to constrict the composition somewhere right around here. Let's reposition it, kind of having the bird here on the left third. Now, so looking at this, for me, I don't know. I like to generally have things going from left to right. Part of that probably is because we read from left to right, and we generally think going from left to right as far as start and stop. So what I'll do is I'll go back to grid over here, and I'm going to press on this flip horizontal over here, this button. And what I'll do is I'll flip the image, and you could, I think you'll agree, like right off the bat, if we go back here, this looks more pleasing to me for some reason. Watch, if we flip back and go back to edit, like, yeah, no, this is great, but something about having it go from left to right looks more pleasing to me. There's just something here that flows better. I'm still not done though. Like I want to go ahead and I'm going to crop this in a bit more and reposition this, and then also rotate it a little bit clockwise. And then let's bring it down and bring it up. This is often what I do. Like if you've watched my videos where I crop, I'll toggle between C in Lightroom, which brings me to crop. If you're using Lightroom Classic, that will be R. And then I'll move it around a bit, and then I'll press E to go to edit. And I want to bring it down a little bit more right there. And just a tiny bit there. You see, this is like obsessive compulsive, but this is good. This looks good right here. All right, now let's start. If we zoom in, you can see, I'll zoom in even more. Again, I shot at a higher ISO, so there is some noise here. So first things first, let's scroll down and apply denoise. I highly recommend applying denoise as early as you can in your editing workflow, because denoise is at the top of our AI edit order of operations list. And so I'm going to turn it on by clicking on denoise. And now you can see, even at the default value, it looks really good, but I'm going to increase the amount a little bit more. So right around there. And you can see we're still retaining all of those high contrast edge details over here. All right, now let's start editing. So first things first, I like to toggle and see what auto does and what the adaptive color profile does. So first, let's go ahead and click on auto. And yeah, that's pretty bright. I mean, we can obviously fix this. So I'm going to click on auto again to undo it. And then I'm going to drop the profile drop down here and select adaptive color. This is also strong, but the nice thing is we have this amount slider. So I'm going to drop this down to 0 and then slowly build it up. So something right around here looks good. Actually, that's a bit too strong. Let's back it off. Okay, that looks good. Now I can see that I triggered the AI edit status menu here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on update all. And the next thing I want to do is get a custom white balance. So let's go over here under color, click on the dropper, and I'm going to select something right here that's more neutral. And you can see, I don't know if you caught that. Let me toggle the color panel. Here is the original white balance, and here's the custom white balance. Do you see how it kind of gets rid of that slight color cast? I think part of it has to do with the light reflecting off of the water is creating a certain cast. And so this neutralizes that. Actually, I'm going to go back to crop. You see, I'm just going to move this over a little bit more. So yeah, right there looks good. Okay, cool. Let's park the color dropper here. All right, let's continue working on tone over here. So normally I would have turned on HDR, but again, because I can't show it to you, I'm not going to show you that editing process. But I will open up white. Let's go ahead and open up the highlights a bit, not too much. Let's open up exposure. Let's drop shadows. Let's see, somewhere right around there looks good. And then blacks looks good. Again, I do not use contrast because I prefer using an S-curve here. So let's drop our 3 dots here to add some contrast. I'm going to take this dot here for the shadow region, drag it down. You can see how we're getting some really nice, rich shadows. Let's open up the highlights here. And then let's move the mid-tone point right here, right around here. Looks really good. This contrast looks excellent. Now, when you work with the point curve, it does add a color saturation boost, which is why we have this refined saturation slider. And so you can get rid of that saturation boost altogether if you bring it to 0, but I generally find like around halfway looks really good. All right, moving on, let's add a tiny bit of a vibrance boost, not too much. I'm not going to touch saturation here. And then let's go down to color calibration, which is one of my favorite panels. If you are using Lightroom, if you're new to Lightroom, you will not see this panel here because it's hidden by default. If you're using Lightroom Classic, this will be at the very bottom of the develop module, and that is called calibration. So to show this in Lightroom, just click on this try dot over here and then select show color calibration, and that will bring the color calibration panel up. And so I'm going to take the blue primary saturation slider, increase it. What this is doing is it is increasing the blue saturation in every single pixel in the image. I'm going to do the same thing for green as well. All right, now it's time to add some detail to the photo, but I don't generally like applying detail globally using these effect sliders. We are in the global edit stack. I do want to use these sliders, but I want to do them locally. So let's move on to the masking panel, which I've said many, many times is probably the most powerful section of Lightroom. All right, let's start by using the adaptive subject mask. So I'm going to click on this, and you can see what an amazing job. Let me turn the overlay on. I mean, this is phenomenal. Not only did it select the bird, but it also was intelligent enough to select its reflection, which is exactly what I wanted. And I didn't have to do anything. I just had to turn on the adaptive mask. So let's go ahead. Again, I mentioned how I want to apply some effects. I'm going to start with applying texture. Now you can zoom in if you want here, and let's go ahead and increase texture. Let's actually zoom out to 100%. It's a bit too close. So right around here, if you're not sure what the slider's doing, just go left and right to see the effect, and then start to kind of slow down once it looks good to you. So somewhere right around here looks really, really good. Clarity, I know I only need to add a touch, like not that much. All right, and then I'm going to zoom to fit again. Let's see, dehaze. Yeah, right. Tiny bit. That looks good. All right, let's go ahead and rename our mask. So click on the try dot on the mask, click on rename, and we're going to call this heron. Now, what I want to do is kind of darken the background a little bit behind the heron. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create new mask, and I'm going to select a radial gradient. And then I'm going to draw out something right around here and kind of put it in the middle. Maybe even a little bit up like this. Now you can see if I darken, it's actually darkening the selection, which is what it's supposed to do, but I don't want that. I want it to darken everything but the selection. So let's go ahead and click on invert, which now flips that selection, and watch if I drop the exposure, you can see how it's darkening everything outside of the selection, including the heron, which I don't want. I want the heron to be preserved, which means that I want to subtract the heron from this radial gradient, which we can do very easily. I can click on subtract here, one of these modifiers, and we already know that the adaptive subject mask does a brilliant job in selecting not just the heron, but its reflection. So I'm going to click on this, and you can see how now with the mask, we basically cut out the heron. So let's go ahead and drop the exposure a bit more, something like this. I'm also going to go to dehaze. Let's see if we increase the dehaze and decrease it. Yeah, let's increase it a little bit. Something like that looks really nice. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of saturation. So let's go ahead and rename this. We'll call this custom vignette. And we can see here the effect of that vignette. Now looking at the heron, I actually want to go back to this mask, and I'm going to drop the highlights on the heron. It's getting a bit too bright, so right around there. Right there. Looks good. All right, let's see this mask. Yeah, you can see how it just brings out really nice detail. And then to wrap things up, we'll go back to the global edit stack here. Let's add some sharpening. So with sharpening, what I like to do is zoom into 100%, and position the active preview area on a part of the photo that has detail, so specifically the bird. And before I do anything, I'm going to make changes to the radius and detail sliders. So for radius, I'm going to drag this to 0.5, the minimum. Basically, what this is saying is to only apply sharpening within a half a pixel on either side of a high contrast edge. Then with detail, I'm going to take this and bring it to 100. And what that's saying is don't just apply sharpening to large details like these large high contrast edges, but apply it to all of these other small high frequency details over here. So now that we've kind of customized the parameters of sharpening, let's go ahead and apply sharpening. So because we're working with a raw file, we apply a default amount of sharpening of 40, but I want to make sure that I have the right amount. And to do that, I'm going to press and hold on the Option key on Mac or Alt on Windows while dragging on the amount slider here, and it turns the image grayscale. This makes it a lot easier to see the effect of sharpening. And so here you can see everything starts to get crispy. You can see even in the water how it's getting crispy, which we don't want. So we'll dial this back and bring it up right around here. This looks good. Now, I've been asked, like, is there like a fixed amount of sharpening that always works for your images? And the answer is no. I generally have the radius to 0.5 and detail to 100. Those are pretty safe bets in terms of slider values. But as far as the amount and masking, those vary based on the image, which is why I highly recommend, making sure you take the time to zoom in at 100%, use the Option key or Alt key while dragging on amount so that you can really refine the amount of sharpening applied. And then that last slider that I just mentioned was masking. Masking will remove sharpening from areas where it's not needed. So specifically, pretty much everywhere in the water is flat. There isn't a lot of detail. There aren't a lot of high contrast edges, but sharpening is being applied currently. When you apply sharpening and masking is set to 0, that means the sharpening is being applied globally. So if I were to move masking, you wouldn't really be able to see what this slider does, which is why that Option or Alt key is so important for this slider too. It's important, again, that you want to zoom to fit so you see the whole image, press and hold on the Option or Alt key, drag on masking, and you'll get this mask view. And so I'm bringing the mask slider to the point where the image looks like I have a rough outline of whatever it is that's my subject. So right here, you can see everywhere that's black, notably the water, has sharpening removed or masked out. But notice all the little kind of water droplets and, of course, all the fine details, not just in the bird, but also in its reflection. Those are white. Anything that has white means that sharpening is being applied. And so that looks good to me right there. So you can imagine how these two sliders are very dependent on the image. So from image to image, you might have different slider values. And so that pretty much does it. If I hit the backslash key, you can see this is our original photo. Of course, it doesn't account for us flipping horizontally, but this is what we started with. This is what we ended with. And I think this is just like, it looks so, so good. I absolutely love the way the color and the detail of the heron's reflection just pops through. Like, it looks so, so good. And of course, for me, that decisive moment was the kind of tip of the beak just breaking through the water. And if you can imagine, now that I'm looking at this, I want to rotate this counterclockwise. This looks like it's too forward. So I'm going to go back to crop and I'm going to bring this right here. Let's see if this looks good. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the body of the bird here, and I want it to be basically more straight up. Yeah, that's looking better. And so I'm actually really glad that happened, because that is a real world look into how I approach my photo editing. Oftentimes I'll go through the entire edit and then I'll just look at it and I'll be like, you know what? This just needs to be rotated just a little bit more. That's just how it worked out. So with that, again, first I want to thank you so, so much for being here, for making it this far. It means the world to me. The fact that you're here, the fact that you watch the videos week in and week out, and hopefully you're subscribed, it gives me the motivation to keep doing this, to keep providing content that you find helpful. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Now, if you want to learn everything there is to know about Lightroom, this is, like I said, just a small portion of it. and you want to learn about Lightroom Desktop, Lightroom Mobile, and Lightroom Web, then please do check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And if you want just a whole playlist of Lightroom editing videos, then I've got you covered here, or you can see what YouTube thinks you might like right here. As always, a thumbs up does help the channel, as does clicking on subscribe and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll see you in 2026.